Ready to dive into some fascinating research.
I am. Let's do it.
We're going to be looking at teenagers and social media today, specifically how they create their online identities.
Should be interesting.
Yeah, and we've got some really interesting research from the Journal of Research on Adolescence. It's going to make you rethink those Instagram photos.
The perfect poses, yeah.
Exactly.
It's all very carefully constructed.
And what's really cool about this is it's based on interviews and surveys with actual teams.
So we're getting like a firsthand look at why they post what they post.
Like what's going on in their heads.
Totally. And I think one of the things that really surprised me about this study is that it kind of challenges some of the assumptions we have about teenagers and social media. Like we often think they're just trying to reach as many people as possible.
Right, yeah.
You know, get those likes up. But this research actually suggests something a little bit different.
Yeah, the first thing that really stood out to me was this idea that for teens, social media is more about connecting with people they already know offline.
Yeah, their friends, their classmates, people in their immediate social circles.
It's not really about like meeting new people or, expanding their network. It's more about maintaining those existing relationships.
Exactly. It's like an extension of their offline social lives.
That makes a lot of sense.
You know, a way to stay connected with people they already know, stay in the loop, all that.
Okay, but even if they're mainly connecting with people they already know, they're still putting a lot of thought into how they present themselves online.
Oh, absolutely. They're very aware of who's watching them,
Yeah.
their imagined audience, you could say,
Right.
and they tailor their posts accordingly.
And they're not just thinking about what they like. They're really trying to anticipate what their friends will like and what their friends will think is attractive.
Exactly. It's all about peer approval.
Yeah. There's even a quote from one of the teens in the study that said, "I get so annoyed when people post boring stuff."
Oh, really?
Like, why would you even post that?
That's so funny. It really highlights the pressure they feel, though,
Yeah.
you know, to present a certain image.
Totally.
It's not just about expressing themselves. It's about, like you said, fitting in.
Yeah, fitting in and gaining that social approval.
Uh-huh.
So how does this imagined audience for teenagers, how's that different from how adults think about their online audience? I mean, we all curate our profiles to some extent, right?
We do. That's a great point. But I think for teenagers, it's much more about pure validation than it is for adults. They're still figuring out who they are and where they fit in.
Right.
And social media becomes this stage where they can kind of experiment with different identities
Yeah.
and see how their peers react.
And speaking of fitting in, the study found some really interesting differences in how boys and girls approach this whole online self-presentation thing.
Yes. One of the key findings was that girls tend to put more effort into crafting the perfect image online,
Right.
and they're more focused on presenting themselves as attractive and likable compared to boys.
Yeah, they're actually asking their friends for feedback on photos before they post them.
Oh, wow.
Or they're getting their friends to like their posts to boost their visibility. It's like they have a whole team of social media consultants behind the scenes.
That's so interesting. And, you know, it kind of makes sense when we think about like the broader social pressures that girls often face.
Right.
There's this expectation to be agreeable
Yes.
and to prioritize social harmony and to fit in with the group.
Absolutely.
And social media, it can amplify those pressures,
Yeah.
make them even more pronounced.
Yeah. But this constant quest for like the perfect image, it must have a downside.
I think so, yeah.
It seems like it could be a breeding ground for insecurity and anxiety.
You're absolutely right. And the researchers acknowledge that this pressure to present this flawless image online can have a real impact on girls' self-esteem, their body image.
Absolutely.
Especially in a world where they're constantly comparing themselves to others.
Yeah. Constantly comparing themselves to like the filtered and edited versions of other people.
Exactly, exactly.
So gender clearly plays a significant role.
It does.
But the study also revealed how teens' online behavior evolves as they mature.
That's right, yeah.
For example, there's a clear difference in how different age groups define what's likable online.
Yeah, the younger teens, particularly those in middle school, they seem to value comments more than anything else.
Really?
They crave that personal interaction, that validation from their friends.
Oh, I see.
You know, getting a comment, it feels like a real connection.
It's like someone actually took the time to say something to them specifically.
Yes, exactly.
Whereas like just hitting the like button is much more passive.
It is. But as they transition into high school, the focus seems to shift to likes.
Interesting. So why do you think that happens?
I think it reflects their evolving understanding of social dynamics.
Okay.
So the younger teens might crave that more personalized feedback, that sense of genuine connection that a comment provides.
Right.
But as they get older, they become more attuned to the kind of the subtleties of social hierarchies.
Okay, so the number of likes becomes kind of a more quantifiable measure of their popularity.
Exactly. It's less about individual connections and more about that broader social currency.
Right. And this kind of ties back to that whole concept of the imagined audience.
Yes, it does.
As teens get older, that imagined audience might expand beyond their immediate circle of friends to encompass a wider peer group.
That's a great point, yeah. They're thinking about how their posts will be perceived by a larger, more diverse audience.
Okay, so we've got teens using social media to connect with existing friends, carefully curating their online image for this imagined audience, and navigating different social pressures based on their age and gender. But before we get too carried away, it's important to acknowledge that this study did have some limitations, right?
Yes, definitely.
It's true, not every teenager's out there, constantly checking their likes and stuff.
Right.
But this research does give us a valuable glimpse into what's going on.
Right.
You mentioned this idea of collaborative image management earlier. What exactly does that look like?
Yeah, so it's not just about like posting a cute selfie or something.
Right.
It's this whole coordinated effort. Girls are asking their friends for feedback on photos before they even post them.
Wow.
They're strategizing about captions, even like coordinating who's going to like and comment on each other's posts,
Oh, wow.
just to boost visibility.
It's like a whole marketing campaign.
Exactly, yeah.
But does this, constant feedback loop, does that create a more supportive online environment? Or does it just amplify the pressure to conform to a specific ideal?
That's a great question. And it's something the study doesn't really address directly,
Okay.
but it's certainly possible that this collaboration, this back and forth,
Yeah.
it could foster a sense of community and belonging.
Right.
But it could also create this more competitive atmosphere where everyone feels this pressure to keep up with the latest trends. Yeah, to present this perfect version of themselves.
Exactly. It's definitely something that needs more research. We
Yeah.
need to explore it further.
Now, while the study highlights the differences between how boys and girls approach social media, it did find some common ground. They both seem very aware of what's considered attractive within their peer groups.
Precisely. So while girls might be more focused on presenting themselves as traditionally feminine, attractive,
Right.
boys also have their own set of criteria.
Yeah.
They might emphasize things like athleticism or humor, popularity,
Yeah.
but essentially they're still seeking that validation
Right.
and acceptance from their peers.
It makes you wonder if social media is reflecting existing social norms and pressures,
Yeah.
or if it's actually shaping those norms and pressures.
Claire.
Is it reinforcing traditional gender roles, or is it providing new opportunities for self-expression?
It's a tough question. I don't think there's an easy answer.
Right.
Social media is a really powerful tool for self-expression. For sure.
But it operates within this larger social context.
Absolutely.
So it's probably a bit of both. It's both reflecting those existing norms
Mhm.
while also providing a platform for challenging them, redefining them.
That's fascinating. And this brings us back to how teens' online behavior changes as they get older. You talked about this shift from valuing comments to prioritizing likes.
Yes.
What do you think is driving that change?
I think it reflects their evolving understanding of social dynamics, how those dynamics work.
Yeah.
Younger teens, they might crave that more personalized feedback, that genuine connection a comment gives them.
Right.
But as they age, they start to tune into those subtle social hierarchies and that importance of social status within their peer group.
So the number of likes becomes this concrete measure of their popularity.
Exactly. It becomes less about individual connection
Right.
and more about that broad social currency.
And this ties back into the idea of the imagined audience, too.
It does, yeah.
As teens get older, that audience expands beyond their immediate friends
It does, yeah.
to their wider peer group.
Right. They're thinking about how their posts will be perceived by a much larger, more diverse audience.
We've been diving deep into this research, and it's really given us a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to hear your perspective on something that wasn't really addressed in the study. How do you think the rise of these newer platforms, TikTok especially,
Right.
how's that impacting teens' self-presentation and those social dynamics. It seems so different from Instagram or Facebook.
You're absolutely right. TikTok, it's all about those short videos.
Right.
And it's got this algorithm that just pushes things that are going viral.
Right.
It creates this whole different set of challenges and opportunities when it comes to self-presentation.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're performing all the time.
Yeah.
You have to be entertaining, engaging, constantly creating new content
Yeah.
just to grab people's attention.
It reminds me of when my niece spent hours choreographing a dance for TikTok.
Oh, wow.
It's clear they put a lot of effort in. There's a lot of pressure to create content for these platforms. Do you think there's even more pressure to be, like, on all the time compared to something like Instagram?
Yeah, I think that's a valid concern. The fast-paced nature of TikTok, trends are constantly changing.
Right.
It can definitely make people feel like they have to keep up, stay relevant.
Yeah.
And then there's the added pressure of that algorithm,
Right.
which we don't really understand. It's a black box.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to take off.
We've all heard stories about teens spending hours on a video, and then it gets, like, 2 views because the algorithm didn't pick it up.
Exactly. And that must be so demoralizing for them.
It's got to be.
All that effort for nothing. And then there's the concern about how these algorithms can create echo chambers, filter bubbles,
Right.
reinforcing harmful biases, limiting exposure to diverse perspectives. It's something we need to be mindful of.
Absolutely. It seems like the more we learn about social media, the more questions we have. This deep dive has definitely made me even more curious.
Yeah. It feels like we've just scratched the surface here.
We have.
Social media is constantly changing.
It is.
There's always something new to learn. One of the biggest takeaways for me is that we need to approach this topic with a lot of empathy.
I agree.
It's easy to just focus on the negative aspects.
Right.
But we have to remember, these platforms can also be good.
Yeah.
You know, they could be used for connection and self-expression and even creativity. This whole conversation has actually made me think about my own social media habits.
Really?
I'm totally guilty of spending way too much time scrolling and comparing myself to others.
I think we all are to some extent.
It's a good reminder that we're all susceptible to those pressures.
We are, regardless of our age.
So what advice would you give to parents or educators or anyone who's trying to help teens use social media in a healthy way?
I think the most important thing is just to keep those lines of communication open.
Talk to them about their experiences.
Yeah.
Ask them what they enjoy, what challenges they face, how they feel about the stuff they're seeing and posting.
It's about creating a safe space for them to talk.
Exactly, without judgment.
Right, right.
And it's important to remember that teens are still developing their critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
So help them question those messages they're seeing.
Right.
Help them recognize those unrealistic beauty standards.
Yeah.
And just be more discerning about the information they're consuming.
So it's not about, like, banning them from social media altogether.
Right.
It's about giving them the tools to navigate it responsibly.
Exactly. And encourage them to diversify their activities, you know,
Yeah.
cultivate hobbies that don't revolve around social media, build those real life relationships.
It's about balance,
Yeah.
right? Social media is just one part of life.
Exactly. Well said.
This has been a great conversation.
It has.
I think we've explored some really interesting research.
Yeah, we challenged some of our own assumptions.
And hopefully given our listeners a lot to think about.
I hope so. I'm really curious to hear what resonated with them,
Me too.
what surprised them, what questions they have.
Yeah. Share your thoughts and experiences and questions with us.
We'd love to keep this conversation going.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time.